Nigeria Anti-Corruption Police, Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC may have failed to state the alleged crime or crimes committed by a human rights activist, Martins Vincent Otts aka VeryDarkMan since 5 days. Over 120 hours the anti-corruption police arrested him in Abuja when he went with his mother to GT Bank to get clarification from the bank over constant apparent unauthorized withdrawals effected by the bank on the woman's savings account. Although VeryDarkMan was arrested alongside his friend, Stephen Avuara aka CPAC, but according to the statement issued by the activist lawyers' legal chamber, Deji Adeyanju and partners, Stephen Avuara was released shortly after he was arrested on Friday, with the chamber insisting that as at on Tuesday, EFCC have not been able to state the crime or crimes their client, VeryDarkMan, committed. Rather, as at on Monday, 4 operatives of the EFCC engaged the human rights activist in hours-long questions that borders on why he allegedly monetized his social media pages, his public comments about a gospel musician, his tax records and his source of income. This apparently authenticated the BBC report that the EFCC confirmed to it that VeryDarkMan was arrested and detained for cyber-talking, a BBC report which EFCC swiftly launched media war against the British media, tagging the BBC report as a fake news, and in retaliation, the BBC Pigeon replied EFCC with a post that its report is correct. And undoubtedly, the crime of cyber-talking may not be the duty of the EFCC, as such is apparently the constitutional responsibility of the Nigeria police force, and if true that the human rights activist was detained for cyber-talking, it shows that the country ruling political party, the All Progressives Congress, APC, may have questions to answer. The APC had earlier issued threat message to the human rights activist after the activist called the Nigeria Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, out over the Senate President traveling to Rome in Italy to attend Pope Francis' burial, while almost daily killings and unabated high level of insecurity are observed in several states in the West Africa country, and furthermore, EFCC in a statement on Tuesday, only issued an apparent vague statement that he received series of petitions against the activist as a way to try to justify why the human rights activist was arrested and detained, but the Anti-Corruption Commission probably could not make any reasonable allegation against the human rights defender, even when the Commission confirmed in the statement that it has been investigating the allegations filed against VeryDarkMan before the activist was arrested in a commando-like style at the exit gate of GT Bank. According to Deji Adeyanju and partners' legal chamber, following our earlier statement on the arrest of our clients, Mr. Martins Vincent Otts, aka VeryDarkMan, and Mr. Stephen Avuara, aka CPAC, by officers of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, and considering the heightened interest that their arrest has generated amongst members of the public, we are constrained to issue this further statement. While we can confirm that Mr. Avuara was released after our intervention on May 2, 2025, Mr. Otts, however, remains in the Commission's custody, and was interrogated for several hours yesterday, May 5, 2025, in the presence of our founding partner, Marvin Omorogbe, Esquire. Our interaction with Mr. Otts largely confirmed the version of events previously communicated to us by Mr. Avuara, as it relates to the circumstances surrounding their arrest. We note with grave concern that 4 days after officers of the EFCC arrested Mr. Otts, the Commission is yet to formally inform him of the specific allegations against him or avail him with any petition that necessitated his arrest. Rather, the interrogation by the Commission's Special Duties Committee, SDC, 4 officers yesterday was primarily focused on our client's handling of Naira notes at a club, alleged monetization of his social media accounts, his public comments about a Nigerian gospel artist, his tax records, and source of income. Notwithstanding the Commission's powers to investigate financial crimes, as streamlined by the Supreme Court in Nwobike vs. FRN and in Nweboshi vs. Earn, its refusal to inform our client of the specific allegations against him not only constitutes a fundamental breach of our client's constitutional right but also suggests to us that this is a case where the Commission has effected an arrest and is now fishing for evidence to justify the arrest. We are, therefore, by this statement calling on the Commission to immediately release Mr. Otz or charge him to court if it has any case against him, as his continuous detention beyond the constitutional limit of 24 hours is now illegal. The legal chamber statement ends in quotes. EFCC in a press release issued on Tuesday with a caption, EFCC's case against Martins Vincent Otz, reads verbatim below. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, in the exercise of its mandate of tackling economic and financial crimes, invited Martins Vincent Otz owing to a series of petitions bordering on sundry issues of alleged financial crimes raised against him. He refused to show up in spite of several invitations sent to him through his known addresses and medium of communication. The petitions pertain to grave allegations of financial malfeasance which cannot be ignored by the Commission. It is needful to admit that the Commission is aware of several unguarded attacks of the suspect against its operations. While such conduct is condemnable, his arrest was not informed by such attacks. The relevant law enforcement agency will be allowed to look into them. The EFCC has a lawful right to hold Otz in custody like any other suspect being investigated by the Commission. The appropriate remand order was obtained in this regard. He has been offered an administrative bail and would be released after fulfilling all the bail conditions. The Commission appreciates the interest of Nigerians in its operations. The passion, enthusiasm and torrential reactions to all of its activities are welcome. However, insinuations about its motive in carrying out its assignment should no longer continue. The EFCC should be allowed to do its job without fear or favor. As soon as investigations are concluded, charges will be filed. It would be recalled that some aggrieved Nigerian youths staged a protest on Monday at the Garlic Area 3 branch of Guarantee Trust Bank, condemning the arrest and detention of social activist Martin Vincent Otz, popularly known as VeryDarkMan. The visibly angry protesters criticized the manner in which the activist was apprehended, saying it was an act of kidnapping. They claimed he was neither invited for questioning nor arrested with a warrant. Former Nnamdi state governor and the Labour Party presidential candidate in the last concluded Nigeria elections, Peter Obi had in a post said, "The recent developments in our nation continue to raise serious concerns about the direction we are headed as a democracy. The tension in the land aggravated by hardship is being needlessly fueled by our attitude to the rule of law and human rights." The arrest of Martin Vincent Otz, popularly known as VeryDarkMan, VDM, though perhaps within the legal rights of security agencies, was carried out in a manner that left many Nigerians unsettled. The display of force, lacking in transparency and civility, closely resembled an abduction. A disturbing method that not only creates fear but also risks being mimicked by criminal elements. If Nigerians begin to struggle to distinguish between legitimate arrests and unlawful abductions, we will lose a vital layer of national security and accountability. This trend is not new. We must recall that even our esteemed judges, the last line of defense for justice, have suffered similar indignities in recent years. When those who interpret the law are treated with such disregard, it is difficult to expect that ordinary citizens will feel protected under the law. Moreover, these methods are beginning to affect our economy and business environment. The backlash directed at GT Bank, allegedly linked to the circumstances surrounding Mr. Otz's arrest, has had serious reputational consequences. At a time when investor confidence is already fragile, we must do all we can to avoid actions that tarnish institutions or undermine the trust of both citizens and the international community. One cannot help but ask, was it impossible to invite Mr. Otz in a civil, transparent, and legal manner? Would that not have spared Nigerians, GT Bank, and our national image the unnecessary shame and losses we now witness? Similarly troubling are allegations surrounding the so-called adoption of the NAN's president. If true, it raises critical questions about the independence of student leadership and the subtle erosion of young voices in our democracy. Nigeria's youth should not feel coerced, silenced, or absorbed into political agendas that do not reflect their will. The oppression of young voices, whether through force, patronage, or intimidation, is a dangerous path that we must not normalize. We must return to a Nigeria where justice is done and is seen to be done without theatrics or abuse. A country where youth can speak freely, judges can serve with dignity, and institutions act responsibly. That is the Nigeria we must rebuild, Peter Obi stated. We have reported that there is apparent tension in Nigeria over the arrest of a popular human rights activist, Martins Vincentots aka VeryDarkMan or VDM, who was allegedly seized by Nigeria security operatives in a manner that have kept many wondering, suspecting acts of oppression and intimidation based on threats issued by the ruling political party, All Progressives Congress, APC, against the human rights activist, after the activist condemned the Nigeria Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, for traveling to Vatican in Italy to attend Pope Francis' burial ceremony, while, he said, the Senate President has failed to visit states where almost daily burial ceremonies are often held, in some states like Plateau, Benue, Kwara, Enugu and Ogun, states where gunmen, bandits are killing the Senate President fellow citizens in large numbers unabated in recent time in Nigeria, and angered by the talks, the APC South Zonal Organizing Secretary, Blessing Agbomhere, issued 7 days ultimatum to VeryDarkMan to apologize to the Senate President, who led 5-man federal government delegation to Rome to attend the late Catholic head funeral ceremony, but immediately, VeryDarkMan in a video issued the public apology to the victims of insecurity in the West Africa country, and in the video, he further accused and condemned the Senate President and other Nigeria leaders for being insensitivity to their institutional responsibilities of protecting lives, saying, insecurity, killing hundreds of people often in Nigeria, is as a result of leadership failure on the part of the Senate President and members of the Bola Ahmed Tinubu-led government, and surprisingly, Deji Adeyanju, the lawyer to the activist, said that VeryDarkMan was arrested at Guarantee Trust Bank, GTB in Abuja on Friday in a more dehumanizing manner, and after he was trapped at the exit door at the GTB premises for 5 minutes, some security operatives came and covered his face with a black cloth before he was led away, and for more than 48 hours, Nigeria authority is yet to issue statement over the arrest of the human rights activist who had on Friday went with her mother to the GTB bank to get clarification over the unauthorized withdrawals constantly done on his mother's savings account, after the activist suspected that someone may have used his mother national identification number, NIN, to take loan from the GTB bank. Canada newly elected Prime Minister, Mark Carney, on Tuesday met with President Donald Trump of the United States, US, after he had arrived at its rival trade war neighboring country, the US, earlier on Monday, with a statement that Canada and US are strongest when they work together, and, on Tuesday when he finally met with Trump at the Oval Office, he bluntly told the US President that Canada is not for sale and won't be for sale ever, after Trump made a repeat statement of Canada becoming the 51st states of the United States of America, USA. Mark Carney, shortly after arriving in the US on Monday, said, "I've arrived in Washington, D.C., ahead of meetings with President Trump tomorrow. Canada and the United States are strongest when we work together, and that work starts now," Carney stated via social media post. During the meeting on Tuesday, Trump said, "As a real estate developer, when you get rid of that artificial line, when you look at that beautiful formation together, I said, that's the way it was meant to be." Carney responded and said, "As you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale. We are sitting in one right now, having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign the last several months. It's not for sale. It won't be for sale ever." It would be recalled that the two leaders quickly engaged in a continuous exchange of words soon after Mark Carney took over as Canada Prime Minister, following Trump's repeated suggestions that Canada become part of the US as the 51st state. After insisting that Canada is not for sale, Mark Carney added that although Canada is not for sale, but the opportunity is in the partnership and what we can build together. And we have done that in the past. Trump still didn't let go of the idea, as he later mused, never say never. Time will tell, it's only time, but I say never, Trump said. I've had many things that were not doable, and they ended up being doable and only doable in a very friendly way. Trump had in some minutes ahead of the meeting lashed out at Canada on his conservative social media platform, the Truth platform, writing, "The US didn't need anything the country has to offer in terms of trade and goods. We don't need the cars, we don't need their energy, we don't need their lumber, we don't need anything they have, other than their friendship, which hopefully we will always maintain. They, on the other hand, need everything from us. The Prime Minister will be arriving shortly and that will be, most likely, my only question of consequence," Trump wrote. Carney's visit comes off the heels of his election win to replace Justin Trudeau that was fueled, in part, by his anti-Trump platform. After his victory, Carney warned Canadians, "Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never ever happen." Trump on Monday had said he was not sure what the Prime Minister wanted to discuss but added that Canada wants to make a deal, while Carney said on Friday that they will focus on trade pressures and the broader future economic and security relationship. "I'm not pretending these discussions will be easy. They won't proceed in a straight line," Carney said last week. "There will be ups and downs, zigzags along the way. But as I said in my remarks, I will fight for the best possible deal for Canada. I will only accept what's in the best interest of Canadians, and I will take as much time as necessary to achieve that."
Takes two to tango, right? But no, I do. I mean, I believe it would be a massive tax cut for the Canadian citizens. You get free military, you get tremendous medical cares and other things. There would be a lot of advantages, but it would be a massive tax cut. And it's also a beautiful, as a real estate developer, I'm a real estate developer at heart. When you get rid of that artificially drawn line, somebody drew that line many years ago with like a ruler, just a straight line right across the top of the country. When you look at that beautiful formation when it's together, I'm a very artistic person, but when I looked at that beauty, I said, that's the way it was meant to be. But, I do feel it's much better for Canada. But we're not going to be discussing that unless somebody wants to discuss it. I think that there are tremendous benefits to the Canadian citizens, tremendously lower taxes, free military, which honestly we give you essentially anyway because we're protecting Canada if you ever had a problem. But I think it would really be a wonderful marriage because it's two places that get along very well. They like each other a lot.
Well, if I may, as you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale.
That's true.
We're sitting in one right now, Buckingham Palace that you visited as well.
That's true.
And having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale ever. But the opportunity is in the partnership and what we can build together. And we have done that in the past. And part of that, as the President just said, is with respect to our own security. And my government is committed for a step change in our investment in Canadian security and our partnership. And I'll say this as well, that the President has revitalized international security, revitalized NATO, and us playing our full weight in NATO, and that will be part of it.
And they have, I must say, Canada is stepping up the military participation because Mark knew, they were low and now they're stepping it up, and that's a very important thing. But never say never. Never say never.
Unknown witness brought by the federal government of Nigeria to federal high court sitting in Abuja on Tuesday over the case involving Biafra Republic agitator Nnamdi Kanu has testified before the court that the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB leader, was the founder of the Eastern Security Network, ESN, an IPOB-acclaimed vigilante security network established to fight against terrorists that were advancing from northern part of Nigeria and building camps in some parts of southeast states, although the unknown witness, who was fully masked and personal details kept secret, introduced himself as a personnel of the Department of State Services, DSS, who was among the detectives that interrogated the detained IPOB leader, but the IPOB leader, Nnamdi Kanu, in a swift reaction said the witness is unknown, denying ever meeting such a person. The defense lawyer raised a point of observation during cross-examination that the issue raised by the unknown witness has been deliberated and struck out by the previous judge. Prosecution lawyer, Adigboyegbara San, on Tuesday called its second witness to testify. The witness claimed that Kanu incited violence and established the Eastern Security Network (ESN), allegedly as an armed wing of IPOB. According to Punch newspaper, the Federal High Court on Tuesday, during the continuation of the trial, banned Favor Kanu, the wife of Prince Findeboy Kanu, the younger brother of the leader of the detained indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, from attending the next 3 court sessions after she streamed the proceedings live on her Facebook page. Justice James Omotosho issued the order on Tuesday after Favor admitted to live streaming the session and apologized. The judge said her action could have amounted to contempt of court. Even though her husband's lawyer, Chief Kanu Agabi, also begged the court for forgiveness, Justice Omotosho maintained that she must be barred for 3 sittings. The judge expressed disbelief that she still went ahead to post the video online despite her phone being seized during a previous court date for a similar offense. "I want to hear from her. Were you not the one who took your phone?" the judge asked. "I did not give the order to forfeit that phone. I don't know if she might be a wife to my brother, Nnamdi Kanu," he added. Prince Findeboy Kanu replied, "She is my wife." Justice Omotosho warned that no one should take actions that could delay the trial, assuring that justice would be done. During the proceeding, the federal government's second prosecution witness told the Federal High Court in Abuja that Kanu is also the founder of the Eastern Security Network. The witness, code-named BBB, stated under examination by the federal government's lead counsel, Adigboyegbara, in the open court presided over by Justice James Omotosho. Recall that at the commencement of the trial, Awomolo had asked the court that the identities of the witnesses be concealed from the public and protected for security reasons. He stated the charges against Kanu borders on a serious offense of terrorism, hence, the need to protect the witnesses. In a short ruling, Justice Omotosho granted the prosecution counsel's request. Kanu, who was initially facing a 15-count charge of terrorism and treason brought against him by the Attorney General of the Federation, got it downsized to 7 after the trial court struck out 8 of the charges on April 8, 2022, for lacking substance. At the resumed trial on Tuesday, BBB told the court that he was assigned by the Attorney General of the Federation to investigate Kanu. Speaking further, he said from the findings of his investigation, the defendant is the operator of Radio Biafra and the founder of the Eastern Security Network. Meanwhile, efforts by Awomolo to tender a letter authorizing the witness to investigate the defendant were opposed by the defense lead counsel, Kanu Agabi. Agabi objected to the tendering of the document because they had not been served. The prosecution afterwards withdrew the document, and the court granted the withdrawal. Likewise, Agabi also opposed the admissibility of a video evidence tendered by the Awomolo, citing same reasons that they have not been served. The IPOB leader supported the submission of his counsel. The court ordered that all materials intended for trial must be served in advance and listed properly. Justice Omotosho emphasized that no document would be admitted unless previously disclosed to the defense. The prosecution informed the court that it had filed a motion for the release of certain evidence already tendered as exhibits, specifically, items numbered 1 to 28 and 30 to 39. The court, in its response, directed that the motion must be refiled, with each exhibit explicitly identified and properly referenced. Earlier, under re-examination by Awomolo, the prosecution witness, code-named AAA, stated that in his understanding of agitation in the context of the defendant, Kanu's actions are driven by secessionist agitation, as he believes that the defendant was pushing for the secession of some parts of Nigeria. Under cross-examination of AAA, by Agabi, the witness was questioned on his awareness of the charges brought against Kanu and previous rulings, which the witness admitted to knowing little about the details of the 15-count charge, including several that had reportedly been struck out by the court. The witness acknowledged awareness of IPOB's role in enforcing Monday's sit-at-home orders, which Agabi responded was among the charges that had been dismissed. Agabi repeatedly highlighted that several serious terrorism-related allegations, including disruption of elections and attacks on federal property, were part of the struck-out charges, a point the witness said he was unaware of. Awomolo, on his part, had also cited concerns about a motion served on his team for the release of certain exhibits tendered in court. He noted that the prosecution objected only to the release of non-perishable items. Meanwhile, shortly after the commencement of the day's proceedings, a mild drama over legal representation ensued. Justice Omotosho informed the open court that he received a protest letter from one Charles Ude, claiming to be part of the legal representation for the trial. However, the legal team of the defendant denied knowledge of Ude, a stance Kanu himself affirmed, insisting Agabi is his counsel. Following the response of the defense to the situation, Justice Omotosho addressed the issue of the defense team being overcrowded. He proceeded to note that only the approved amount of counsel can be allowed on the defense team. Justice Omotosho said, "I approved 16 counsels for the defendants, and I have 29. I won't take it. It is very important we move on without hitches." Citing the small courtroom and recalling a previous agreement, he threatened to move the proceedings online if decorum was not maintained. "I don't want to be pushed to take the case virtually. We have the facility," the judge warned. The Punch newspaper report ends in quote. Meanwhile, the organizing lawyer for Nnamdi Kanu legal team, Aloy Ejimakor, had stated after the previous court sitting that a decision has been made by the legal team of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu that, from now onwards, there will be no further press briefings on the facts of the case, except on peripheral facts that are not sub judice. This decision was also conveyed to the judge in open court. We had reported that one of the witnesses, called by the federal government of Nigeria to testify against the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, Nnamdi Kanu, over the alleged act of terrorism, secretly gave his testimony on Tuesday before the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja, with the coordinating lawyer to Nnamdi Kanu, Barrister Aloy Ejimakor, saying, "The FG witness was only identified merely by initials and the person gave his testimony against Nnamdi Kanu behind the screen, following the application filed by the federal government lawyers as approved by the trial judge to keep the identities of the FG witnesses secret." This, Aloy Ejimakor tweeted while the court proceeding was ongoing, that the federal government only has 3 senior advocates of Nigeria, SAN, that 6 SAN have stood firmly behind the detained Biafra leader. We had reported that Justice James Omotosho, the new judge that took over the case of the detained Biafra agitation leader, Nnamdi Kanu, has accepted the apology tendered by Nnamdi Kanu through one of his lawyers, Barrister Kanu Agabi, a Cross River State-born former senator in the Nigeria National Assembly and 2-time Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice under the then-President Olusegun Obasanjo, over the detained Biafra leader's outburst or manner he protested sequel to his rejection of the former judge, Justice Binta Nyako, when the case started afresh on Friday with the new judge, which Nnamdi Kanu pleaded not guilty to the 7 counts terrorism charges filed against him by the federal government. We had reported that the detained Biafra Republic agitation leader, Nnamdi Kanu, has not been released by the Chief Justice of Nigeria, CJN Justice Kadirat Kekere-Ekan, Nigeria National Judicial Council, NJC says in reaction to viral rumors that the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB leader has been set free by the CJN on the ground that Nigeria courts under her leadership have no jurisdiction over the freedom fighter's case due to the way and manner he was forcefully extradited from Kenya to Nigeria in 2021. We had reported that the detained leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, Nnamdi Kanu, on Valentine's Day sent a message to the lovers, supporters of the Biafra Republic agitation and the general public that he would remain in detention until impartial and unbiased judge take over the case of alleged terrorism filed against him by the federal government of Nigeria, narrating how the judiciary has been biased against him since years of his detention. We had reported that Justice Binta Nyako of Federal High Court in Abuja has adjourned indefinitely after the detained leader of indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, Nnamdi Kanu, was seen in a privileged video footage during February 10, 2025 court session, staged a resistance protest, insisting while confronting the judge face-to-face, including the prosecuting counsel, Adigboyegbara that Justice Binta, who is an indigene of Katsina State, same state with former President Muhammadu Buhari, is biased, saying, Justice Nyako, who had held the political position of Katsina State Attorney General and Commissioner of Justice, that her court is not a court of law but a shrine of injustice, accusing the judge of poke-nosing with authorities to pass wrong judgment against him in order to be left off the hook by the federal government. Her son, Abdulaziz Nyako, and her husband, retired Vice Admiral Matala Nyako, who was once Chief of Naval Staff, Deputy Chief of Defense Staff, pioneer former military governor of Niger State, 2 times governor of Adamawa State, who were impeached twice by Adamawa State House of Assembly for misconduct, one of the soldiers that fought against Biafra during Nigeria's civil war, a current member of the ruling All Progressives Congress, APC, who is facing corruption charges alongside his son in a criminal allegation filed before court of law since 2015 by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, over alleged cases of abuse of office, criminal conspiracy, theft and money laundering. We had October 2024 reported that the Chief Judge of Federal High Court in Nigeria, Justice John Tahemba Soho, has rejected the verbal plea by the detained indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB leader, Nnamdi Kanu, for the trial judge in the case, Justice Binta Nyako, to withdraw being the judge over the lawsuits. Justice Soho stated that Kanu's case was reassigned to Justice Nyako due to its prolonged nature, dating back to 2015. Given that Justice Nyako had handled the case for the most part, she was deemed the most suitable judge to see it through to its conclusion. However, the Chief Judge directed that if at the next hearing of the case, Kanu still insists on recusing Justice Nyako, he must file a written motion with an affidavit, stating all the grounds for requesting the recusal. We had reported in September 2024 that Justice Binta Nyako of Federal High Court sitting in Abuja have withdrawn from the case of detained Biafra leader Nnamdi Kanu after the trial could not commence following the Biafra leader's personal confrontation with the judge for the second time in the year. We had reported in May 2024 that, in a rare case in the history of legal proceedings in the world, Nnamdi Kanu, the detained leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, helped himself at the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja and played the role of a lawyer with full energy and vibrant command of words, with fearless loud voice defended himself with face-to-face confrontation with the trial judge, Justice Binta Nyako, and the federal government prosecution counsel, Adigboyegbara. Kanu is being prosecuted by the federal government on a 7-count bordering on terrorism.
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.